Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guest, we provide the knowledge, skills, insight, and inspiration that you need to find your happy. So I know that if you guys are anything like me, you love a plan, you love a checklist, you love a process, you love to know what the steps are to get you from here to there. So it can be really, really challenging for us as lawyers to continue moving forward when we aren't sure that we're taking the right steps to get where we want to go, and we don't know how things are going to sort themselves out. And on today's episode, I chat with Marni Blank about her journey from practicing attorney to co-owner of Blank Studio NYC, which is a photo studio and creative space in New York. I'm always saying on the show how hard it can be to know how the pieces will all come together, and that the secret is to follow your curiosity and just trust that there's even more out there for you than you can possibly imagine. Well, I finally found the perfect story to showcase that reality. Marni's story is a concrete example of how this can all play out. So I'm hoping this inspires you, and without further ado, let's get to the show. Welcome back to the Happy Lawyer Project, guys. I want to issue a warm welcome to today's guest, Marni Blank. Marni, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I think it'd be great if you could just start with a brief description of who it is you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Marni. I am a proud resident of Brooklyn, New York, and I've been in the city for going on 14 years now, which is crazy. But I grew up 45 minutes away in Stamford, Connecticut, went to undergrad at University of Rochester, and then made my way to the city. And after a little under 5-year career in the law, I have switched out and become the co-owner of a rental photography studio and event space called Blank Studio NYC that I run with my younger sister.
I didn't know you ran it with your younger sister. That's so interesting, and we're going to have to dive into that. But before we jump to all the exciting, fun stuff you're doing today, let's talk a little bit more about that 5-year career in the law. Why did you become a lawyer?
It was always something that seemed to be where I was headed. In college, I interned at Fried Frank. I interned at the district attorney's office, and it was something that just always seemed to be on my radar. And my parents started inviting their friends over who were lawyers or ex-lawyers while I was still in college and going into my years as a legal assistant, trying to kind of talk me out of it. And I did not listen to them and continued to go to law school anyway. But then, I went to law school. I really enjoyed the learning aspect of it, being intellectually stimulated. But I also started law school right at the time of the economic crisis. Great job right out of school. Was not the case, when I graduated in 2010. But after kind of floundering for a few months after law school, not sure what I was planning on doing, I ended up getting a job with a federal district judge in the Southern District and working, part clerk and part office management for a federal judge for 3 years. And that's kind of, where I started my legal career at, writing and editing decisions and things around that. And then I moved to New York City Housing Authority, where I was a labor and employment lawyer for a while. And I was just not feeling passionate. I wasn't feeling super motivated. And I was wondering why I was waking up in the morning kind of wishing my day away. And I had wonderful colleagues, but I didn't feel like I was getting the training or the mentoring. And that has a lot to do with the fact that, city agencies don't necessarily have a lot of resources at their disposal. But I found myself sitting in my windowless office, watching my snake plant die before my eyes because it wasn't getting any light or thriving. And I was like, if my plant's dying, I feel like I might be dying a little on the inside as well. And I knew that I kind of needed a change.
Why do you think it was that your parents were trying to talk you out of going to law school?
I think they had a lot of friends who were unhappy as lawyers, and I think that also has to do with the time and the age where they came up. People didn't switch around their careers as much, with my parents' generation, and so people stayed in jobs that they didn't necessarily love for longer than they should have. And when they finally got out, they, saw the light and didn't want other people to necessarily make that mistake.
And did you ever consider, you're in a creative business now, did you ever consider that maybe you should be a lawyer with creatives or do something more entrepreneurial? Was that ever in the cards for you?
It was, but I honestly, I wasn't sure where to start. And at that point, I felt really burnt out and just not passionate in general and felt that I needed a complete switch up. It's something that I would still consider going back to, especially now that I work with a lot of creatives and freelancers. There's so much need for legal help within those career choices. But as of now, I didn't feel that I needed to continue in law to know that, I needed a change.
Absolutely. So let's talk about how that change came about. Like, when did you kind of make the decision that you were going to leave? And then how long was it from that point to deciding that this was the decision you were going to make?
Yeah, I had been thinking about it for a while, and finally, I don't know, something at work happened and a switch went off, and I knew it was time. And so I had this big plan that I would sort of do my Eat, Pray, Love portion of my life. So I decided I was going to do it. I saved up for a few months. I rented out my apartment and I went on a 6-month backpacking trip around the world.
Oh, you did like a real Eat, Pray, Love. I thought you were like a metaphorical Eat, Pray, Love.
I really did it. I did it. And it was the best decision of my whole life. You meet so many incredible people in your travels and, learning to live with a lot less. And I think that's something that keeps a lot of people in jobs that they're not necessarily happy with. Obviously, money keeps you in a certain, way of life. And to experience living with, 5 sets of clothes and, only a very fixed amount of money, it really gives you a different perspective. So I did that and I came back and I sort of was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to go back to what I was doing, but I didn't really know a way forward. And, with a law license, you can also get a real estate license without doing the exams and taking all the tests. And, for $150 and a JD, you can get a real estate license. And so I ended up working for a startup in the city doing residential real estate. And I did that for about a year. And I was good at it. And there were parts of it that I really loved, but it's also a profession that you have to really set boundaries or else you could be working 24 hours a day. And I was working more in real estate than I was as a government attorney. And I was not any happier. And at the same point, my sister, who was in the apparel design field for 10 years, was feeling a great sense of unhappiness in her career choice at that point, feeling a need to change. And she was a client at the type of studio that we ended up co-owning. And she was sitting in one of these spaces in, deep Brooklyn with no amenities. And she's like, how much are we paying for this? Why isn't there anything better out there? She's like, I can do this better. And because I was in real estate, she asked me if I could just for fun take a look around and see what kind of spaces were available. And all of a sudden we're dreaming and
I love this story so much.
And then we're creating a business plan, and then we both quit our jobs and start doing this full time. And that is the beginning of Blank Studio NYC. Blank is our last name, and obviously we're sisters. So thanks Mom and Dad, because it worked out with. And so it took us 6 months to find the studio space that we're currently in. And it was, a very unloved space. And we really renovated, took advantage of my sister's creative backgrounds to create this warm and inviting space where we want people to be able to create and connect and, enjoy their day. Our ceilings are 15 feet tall. There's tons of light. And we've tried to create an environment where people want to hang out. People want to be in our space, whether it's for a photo shoot or a corporate offsite or, I partnered recently with a law firm to do an elevated CLE series. So it's kind of a space that can be whatever anyone wants it to be. And it's really fascinating what someone can create out of nothing and how different everyone's experience is.
I am absolutely obsessed with this story because it's one of those stories that when you tell it backwards, all the pieces fit together.
Yes.
Like it all seems like your sister was building this career in fashion, you were building this career in like law and real estate, and then you just came together both feeling, at the exact right moment to build this new venture together. But it's one of those things that you couldn't have planned.
No, absolutely couldn't have planned it. And in no way in my wildest dreams would I've ever thought that I would be in business with my sister. We have a great relationship, but we are incredibly different people. And this is actually I think the only type of business that would have worked for us where we can each kind of stay in our own lanes. I do the operations, I did the formation documents and I take care of a lot of the communication with clients. And Willa, my sister, takes care of kind of the creative outlook of the space. She has a lot of contacts in the industry and she does more of the marketing and the Instagram and we kind of get to own our pieces of the business without trampling on the other, which allows us to continue to love each other and like each other.
That's so amazing. And so how did you guys finance this? So you said it took you 6 months to find the space, and then it also took some time to create the space into what you wanted it to be. And I assume all of this takes time and money. Were you guys still working your other jobs, or did you get?
Yeah. So at the beginning, when we were forming the company and kind of working everything out, we were both working other jobs to kind of give ourselves a nest egg to survive on while. And we both were lucky enough to have enough in savings to kind of get us through the beginning and, really the first year where things were going well, but, it wasn't a steady paycheck. And it's definitely hard to take that leap knowing that you need to make money. It's not something that could be a forever, passion project. And so there was a real need to hustle and get things started fast to make sure that we could support ourselves.
And when you made this transition kind of from employee to owner of a business, entrepreneur, and I guess perhaps real estate is slightly more entrepreneurial than law, so maybe it was more gradual than it would be for most people. How was that transition for you?
It was pretty difficult. The life of a freelancer, and in some ways I consider my role now a freelancer because I never know what my next week is going to bring, which is both exciting and terrifying. And as a lawyer, you're paid by someone for the most part, unless you own your own practice, and you're getting a steady paycheck. You know that you're going to have healthcare taken care of, and to be in a position where you are responsible for your own future was kind of quite terrifying. And so it was kind of being okay with those ups and downs and learning that this business is sort of cyclical and some months are going to be amazing and some months are going to be okay, but that overall it's growing in the right direction. I think, not having a set schedule is something that was hard in terms of, having set deadlines from a boss. And, in my field, I could be working on 1,000 things, or I could be procrastinating and doing nothing. And it's on myself to keep those deadlines in place and to be kind of task oriented and make sure that I'm not wasting time. And I think the other part is that, obviously there was a huge and continues to be a huge fear of failure. You don't know what you don't know when you're starting a new business. And both my sister and I have to wear all the hats. I'm the secretary, I'm the face of the company, I'm the marketer, I'm the barista, which happened to me my first job at Starbucks. back in the day, but I've come full circle. And for the first year, I was the janitor and the lawyer and the salesperson. It's everything. So it was hard to be confident enough that I'll figure out what I need to know, and that you're still going to make mistakes even if you try your hardest, but doesn't mean that you're not going in the right direction.
You've touched on this a little bit, and I think it's really interesting for a lot of people who are thinking about doing something more creative or more non-traditional. It's hard for them to understand and really visualize what it means to have all those roles and what the workday looks like and how you prioritize. I don't know if you can touch on that a little bit. Like, what does a work week look like for you? What does a work day look like for you? How do you manage your schedule today that's so different from when you were working in the law firm or, in a legal capacity?
So obviously when I was working for the government, I clocked in at 9 and I left at, 5 or 6, and kind of left work at work for the most part. But in my new field, I'm answering emails at all hours of day and night still, but I like having that personal communication with clients. It's a lot more client facing than I was as a lawyer, but my typical week is dependent on how much the studio is booked. So some weeks the studio will be booked 5 days and a day on the weekend, and some days it'll be 3 days. And so the beginning of each week, my sister and I kind of decide, well, what else do we have on our schedule this week that, errands or appointments, et cetera. And we kind of work together to decide who will be in the studio that day running the show and who will be working from home, which is a nice flexibility where we can balance each other out and allow each other to take the time we need to do what else in our lives are pressing. But when I'm at the studio, I'm, greeting guests, making sure they understand how the studio is run and if they have any questions, and really just kind of being there to make sure everything goes smoothly. And while I'm up there, we have kind of a loft space that overlooks the studio, so we can just conduct business while someone has a shoot going on. I'm answering emails, I'm paying the bills. We've started a workshop series that once a month we'll put on because, part of what I wanted out of this transition was to be more creative. So putting on events that we want to hear about. So we've had personal finance talks, we've done the CLE, we've had an astrologer come in, we had a dominatrix come in and talk about verbal self-defense practices for women. We've had all different kinds of things. We're going to have a fear of public speaking workshop in March. And so it's been fun to kind of be able to brainstorm ideas and bring them into fruition. And that's kind of really it, just trying to figure out ways to bring in new business and new revenue streams. And we're working on securing a second location, which is kind of our 2019 focus at this point.
That's amazing. When did you open the first one?
We will have been open 2 years in February.
That's phenomenal growth.
Yeah, it's been really incredible. And, there are certain things that we love in the second space that we don't have in our current space. And so we feel that we can gather a new market share from growing and having, a freight elevator or a capacity for larger workshops and meetings. We cap things around 40 now and keep it very intimate. And we'd love to have a space that's able to accommodate larger settings and groups.
Sounds so amazing. I'm just so amazed by how much that has grown and how quickly it's grown. Has that surprised you?
It was surprising. I came into it knowing that my sister's contacts in the industry would be a great starting off point, but it really did take off. And for the most part, we've done almost zero marketing. Only in the last few months have we really done some reach out. A lot of it has been word of mouth at this point and just very, organic growth. Yeah. And so it has been really incredible. We've been in the black since year one and things have been going really well. There's always room for growth and improvement, but I feel really proud about what we've created.
So when you hear this story, I think some people might hear it and think that it kind of all just fell in your lap and that you were kind of it was almost too easy because you had everything you needed to be successful in this. So I'd be interested to know if you've had any challenges or kind of what are the obstacles that you've really been facing in growing this business in the last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we don't have a lot of money at our disposal at the moment, it's been challenging to figure out how to grow without spending more than we have. So I think it's always trying to figure out new ways to surprise and delight, I guess is the term in the industry. You know, how can we make the experience better? How can we get more people to see us, to view us, to come and to want to come back? And I think one of the big challenges has been, you know, how do I work with a sibling? How do I keep a personal relationship? You know, we live 7 blocks from each other. You know, we like each other. We have the same social network, and to work together and to not want to murder each other. It's a very fine balance and something that we continue to have to constantly work on, you know, open communication. And I think one of the other big struggles is that, you know, I don't have that boss or that team to ask questions to. A lot of it I have to figure out for myself, or I have to seek out people in the industry who I think can help answer questions and, you know, calm some of those anxieties. And I think there's always a fear of, you know, things are going really well. When is the other shoe going to drop? When are we going to really, you know, struggle? And, you know, that being said, it's not that we're making so much right now that I can rest on my laurels. We're still in growth mode. So there's a lot of anxiety around owning the business and fearing that it will all disappear.
So the last question before we move on to the next segment, how are you guys currently thinking, I know this is probably a really complex question, but how are you thinking about how much money to keep to pay yourself versus put back in the business versus grow the business? Because as, you know, the owner, that's kind of all up to you.
Right.
And with a family member, I'm sure that you guys don't completely align on the best way to spend the money.
Yeah, that has been something that it's kind of trial and error, to be honest. You know, some months we've been going kind of, how is our month done? Should we pay ourselves? and that has seemed to work for the most part, because you do need to keep that money for a rainy day, and rent in New York City is outrageously high. And, you know, there are these dips in the market because, you know, the fashion industry which is part of our main core business, is very cyclical. So it is trying to figure out how much do we save, how much do we spend on ourselves. And right now we've done kind of a good job of putting money away, but also this year we have decided that it's more important than to squirrel it away, to put it towards marketing, to put it towards growing, because that in the long run will help us even if we're a little short right now.
I love that. Now we're going to transition to the second segment of the show, which I call the happiness hot seat. So this is a quick fire round, and I'm just going to ask you 5 questions. I just want your kind of gut reaction on how these, you know, on the answers to these questions. Are you ready? All right. So number 1, how do you deal with your fear of failure?
So I would say that my fear of failure, that it's not going to go away. It's going to be a constant level of low anxiety all the time, because that is what owning your own business is kind of all about. But I would say kind of being comfortable in knowing that everyone feels this way, as far as I can tell from talking to other people who have started their own business. I think that what I have done is seek out mentors. I have a bunch of family members who have started their own industry in the city as well. And I reach out to them when I'm feeling, you know, overwhelmed or anxious or have questions, and also seeking out people in my individual industry. You know, when we got into the industry, we talked to a lot of different studio owners to see kind of where their heads were at. And I think the other thing was that there was never a right time to start one's own business, or that you're going to ever get over that fear of failure. So sometimes you just have to jump and kind of fake it till you make it.
Love that. So number 2, how do you prioritize your own happiness?
So great question. I would say that, as I've mentioned, a love of travel is something that's always been a part of my life. And I think finding time for that. And so with this job, I've been able to have an immense amount of flexibility in my schedule and kind of do what you've done where I can, answer emails or do some of my specific work from anywhere. And so I've taken a lot of opportunity to travel and to continue to explore different creative projects. I've been taking a quilting class, an embroidery class, baking classes, things that I know are kind of stress relievers and also bring me happiness. And I also have learned to say yes to things that I want to say yes to and to say no to things that I feel like I should do but don't want to do. And that's been really important for me in prioritizing my own happiness.
I really like that answer for many reasons, but primarily because so many people who start their own business get stuck in that scarcity mindset, both around time and money. And they're afraid to take that time for themselves, and they're afraid to spend that money on themselves because they're so worried about when the money is going to come in from the business. And so to hear you say that you are taking that time and you are investing that money in things that bring joy and kind of relieve stress, and that is a good investment in yourself.
Absolutely. And there are ways of doing it that are not super expensive. There are all different kinds of workshops and courses around the city that are, not that expensive, but bring serious joy. And same with travel. You can travel on a 5-star luxury budget, or you can stay in hostels and eat street food. And there's a way to do both and still run a business and still feel like you have the money to make that happen. But I also, I do have some luxury of feeling like I would rather have time and flexibility than have the money at this point.
Yep. I think the practical points that you make are important ones, but the mindset point is the more important one almost, because until you get to the point where you think it's even worth doing, you aren't even going to look into the budget option or what you can afford because you're just so stuck in the mentality that it's not important right now in your life.
Right. I mean, I could work 24 hours a day on the business, but
correct.
Sustainable life? No, definitely not.
Yep. Okay. So question number 3, and this is the one that this is the new question, which is, what mindset shift have you had that's really transformed your life?
I would say that, my life does not need to follow the same path as my friends and colleagues. Mine can look different, and that's still going to be okay. And it's still going to bring me happiness and success. It just might not look like everyone else's, or it might not get there at the same time as everyone else. And I did have this, and I do sometimes still have this feeling like I'm failing because I haven't hit some of the milestones of everyone else, like a certain money, certain monetary goal or, marriage, et cetera, at this point. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get there, or that it just means that my path looks different. And I don't know, if there's one thing I've learned is that life is weird and beautiful, and you never know where you're going to end up being. Like I would never have thought I would be doing this 3 years ago. It just was never in my realm of possibility. And so I feel like I'm doing what I need to do, and other people will do what they need to do, but I shouldn't look at theirs and compare them to me and my journey.
I know everyone says this, but comparison is such a stealer of joy.
Absolutely.
So, number 4, can you name a book that has really inspired you or inspired your journey?
Sure. Something I read recently was The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Yeah.
And it talks about this upper limit problem where, if things are going really well in your life, or something's going great, and you kind of then put a limiting belief on yourself, or, a negative emotion, or you do something kind of to self-sabotage. And he talks about how to recognize that and how to kind of overcome it so you can really reach that next level, whether it's in career, relationship, et cetera. And I find myself doing that all the time. And And I think it's important to be able to recognize when things are going well, and you should, celebrate that instead of being like, well, then I didn't do this and I'm failing. It's taking those little moments to congratulate yourself and feel good about where you are, and then not think about all the things that have gone wrong or will go wrong.
Which is hard for lawyers, but yes, point taken.
I have a constant level of anxiety around this.
Oh. So, last question for this segment is, what do you think separates happy lawyers from those lawyers who struggle to find happiness in life with a law degree?
I would say listening to your intuition and what makes you happy, and knowing when it's time to switch things up. I know a lot of lawyers, and really anyone who kind of pushes down those feelings of dissatisfaction or rejects those thoughts. And obviously we've been ingrained to a certain point in feeling like that, but it really does you a disservice if you're not listening to what's making you happy or unhappy and kind of following that. And I think also just a willingness to seek help. I think that a lot of lawyers and non-lawyers are struggling with all different kinds of normal things like career and love and, all different kinds of things. And if you're willing to seek out therapy or coaching, an exercise partner, or just like someone to help, talk through an issue you're having, I just feel like none of us have this figured out. So if you can seek that extra support, I find that essential in bringing happiness with a law degree or without a law degree.
Amen. So before I let you go, I have a listener question for you, and I'm going to change the question a little because I think you've answered part of it. But Legally Jasmine asked on Instagram about hiring out and whether you get help on your business so that you can focus on your strengths.
Yes, I think that's so important. Something, I'll give a kind of a funny example, but, my sister is way better at cleaning than I am. And we have a 1,800 square foot space. And for the first year, we couldn't afford to have a cleaning crew. So we were, on our hands and knees cleaning every night. And we would get into constant arguments about, was it clean enough, or, how we went about it. And I think once we had the money to hire a cleaning crew, it kind of allowed us to take away something that was not bringing us joy and was causing, stress and anxiety, and taking that off of our plate. And I think it's the same with, we do have freelance help when it comes to, helping with marketing or, just little things around the business where we feel stretched. But I do think getting outside help and assistance is essential in being able to focus on growing and being happy with what we're doing.
Who was your first hire, or what was your first hire?
Well, we still have just freelancers at this point, but a lot of Willa, my sister's friends in the creative industry, are freelancers. So we'll have people who can help watch our studio when we either have a family gathering that we both need to be at, or we both just happen to be unable to work that day. So having someone who's responsible and being at the space, and also, the janitorial part of it was one of our first, commitments of spending monthly on someone else helping us. And I think it was the best decision we made for ourselves at the time.
I think that's a great decision. And I think that getting cleaning help is also one of the best decisions a lot of people make in their personal lives. So whether it's your sister at work or for me, my husband at home, I think getting someone to help with the cleaning can take a lot of pressure off.
I support that 100%.
So what's the best way for people to learn more about the studio, follow your work, and possibly get their firms to sign up sometime?
Yeah, so we have a website, which is blankstudionyc.com, where you can learn more and sign up for our workshops and happenings and learn more about the business in general. And we also have a fun Instagram feed at Blank Studio NYC, and there we post behind the scenes of the shoots that we're on. We have all different kinds of cool clients coming in and creating, and it's always fun to see that. So we hope people will follow along.
Yes, you have a beautiful Instagram, so I would definitely recommend it. Thank you so much, Marni, for coming on today. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thanks so much for listening. And if you got value out of this episode and you think there's someone else who might enjoy it, I'd love for you guys to share. And if you have any questions for me, please head over to the website at thehappylawyerproject.com and you can leave me a voicemail right on the website. When you get there, you'll see a little tab on the right hand of the screen and you can click on it and leave a voicemail there. I absolutely love hearing from you guys. Last but not least, if you enjoy this podcast and you like the content that I'm bringing to you guys and you haven't done so already, I would really encourage you guys to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and review. That's all for this week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.